This is the first of 2 webinars that will provide us with the basic tools we need to begin the process of assessing the carbon footprint of our congregations and developing a plan to become carbon neutral by 2030. At the 2022 Diocesan Convention, the convention voted to support a resolution to develop plans to be carbon neutral by 2030. This webinar, hosted by the Commission on the Environment and Interfaith Power and Light, is the launch of diocesan efforts to provide congregations with the support and tools that they need. We are recording this webinar. The recording will be available and distributed early next week. The work that we're doing together is a response to God's call for us to take care of creation. And so before we begin, Reverend Alex Leach from St. Luke's Woodland will lead us in prayer. Reverend Leach.
Thank you very much. Let us pray. Holy and divine God, who created all that is and blessed it as good, continue to guide us in our own journey and work to care for your earth, to love creation as we love ourselves, that we may bring the whole world joy and peace, dwelling always in your kingdom. We ask you to bless the work that we do this day, the learning, the growing, and let that blessing pour out into our various congregations, where we may bear much good fruit in working towards your kingdom on earth. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Our presenter this afternoon is Sarah Paulus, the Community Engagement and Programs Director for Interfaith Power and Light. She was awakened to climate action with the proposal to build a huge coal-fired power plant in her community in Iowa. Her response was to create the Cool Congregations program to help members of her home congregation reduce their energy use and care for our common home. Sarah has been involved with this work of helping congregations and groups of congregations to address climate change for over 12 years. She's inspired to do this work by her 3 daughters. We are very grateful to have Sarah Paulus with us this afternoon. Sarah?
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Miriam, and that beautiful opening prayer. Alex, that was really lovely. And thanks to everybody for being on the call today. You've already done 50% of the work just by showing up today. So thank you very much for coming. And I just want to compliment the Commission on the Environment for taking on this task of offering to assist all the congregations in your diocese to care for creation in this way. And why are we focusing on houses of worship? Well, carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels to heat, cool, and power our congregational facilities contributes to climate change. And you've already seen the impact of the changing climate in California. We probably don't need to go through that. And why us as people of faith? Why should we lead the way? We are called to love our neighbor and God's beautiful creation, our fragile island home. We do this by caring for our common home so that all may survive and thrive in a healthy and safe climate. So in partnership with the Diocesan Environmental Commission, I'm offering 2 training sessions to help you prepare to meet this call and achieve the audacious goal to be carbon-free by 2030. This first session is on how to develop a strong green team. Why, you say? You need a team of people to carry out this work. This includes developing fluency in speaking about why we as people of faith are called to act on climate change and what our goals should be. Green teams must be able to articulate their thoughts to others to persuade them to join the action and know how to organize themselves within their congregational structure so that they are well supported. You'll be writing your responses to several questions during the time we are together, so have your document 7 Steps to Success handy to record your thoughts. This is a document that was emailed to you, and you will also find the link to it in the chat. And if you can't find it, you can just write your thoughts down either on a piece of paper or on a document on your computer. And so I'd like to start with this story about what motivates me to take action to heal our climate and care for our common home. You heard some of my story already from Miriam, but I have another story that's a little more recent. So you know I have 3 daughters. And I want to forward the next slide, and it's not forwarding. Let's see. Perhaps you can help me out, Gabe. Why is it not forwarding?
Click on your PowerPoint. I think you're on Zoom right now.
Oh, I see. Just click on the
There you
picture.
go. Yep.
Thank you so much. I was using the buttons on my keypad. Okay. So this is my middle daughter and her husband, and they farm in Washington State. I went out to visit her and assist with the birth of their first child. Now, Washington had their worst drought and their biggest fire ever in the summer of 2015, and about 1 million acres were burned. And it came within 3 blocks of my daughter's farm, and we all had to evacuate in a hurry, with my daughter due to deliver any day. So we had to travel to another town 2.5 hours away. This is the fire near the farm. I took this picture before we left. And we had to travel to a town 2.5 hours away. That's how far we had to go to escape the worst of the smoke, where she delivered her baby, and we stayed for 2 weeks until the air cleared enough to return. They lost work time for themselves and their 15 employees. They lost crops that came ripe when we all had to evacuate. They lost animals that could not be evacuated. It was a very hard time. So I am motivated to work to heal our climate and protect my children and my grandchildren. So to be persuasive in getting other members of your congregation to join your efforts to reduce your congregation's impact on the earth, you will want to be able to tell a story yourself about your own motivation for doing what you can to restore our common home. To be an effective agent of social change, you don't need to be an expert in climate change science or its solutions, but you do need a genuine, heartfelt story about what motivates and sustains you. As people of faith, we know that our stories gives our lives meaning and purpose. We live by story. So never underestimate the power of narrative to bring about change. So a good story will answer these questions. Why do you care enough to take action on climate? And these are some ways to think about that question. Who do you love or are concerned about that is affected by climate change? What's your special concern about climate change, and how do you feel about it? What does your faith tradition have to say on the topic? And what do you believe about caring for the earth? This is part of developing an articulate and persuasive green team. You will have a chance to begin work on your story today, interspersed throughout the workshop. I realize you may not come up with a well thought out story in a single hour, but I hope that you will continue to work on it after you leave. It'll become your most valuable resource in attracting others to join you. So let's look at the first question here. Who do you love or are concerned about who is affected by climate change? I'm going to give you 3 minutes right now to jot a few notes on your 7 Steps to Success handout, or just on a piece of paper, that will help you develop your story after our hour today. And then I'm going to ask you to drop a word or a phrase in the chat that points to your story. So I'm just going to be quiet now for a few minutes, let you do some writing and drop your word in the chat. Miriam, would you like to read out some of those responses in the chat? Who do you love, who you're concerned about, who's affected by climate change?
Sure, we have some really wonderful responses here. The first one, our grandbaby due at the end of the month. My 2 young men's sons, all living things. My husband, great nieces and nephews and their futures. Everyone I know, including fish, birds, bears, deer, and so on. And my city, which could be entirely destroyed by wildfire. Who do I love? The young people in my youth group, my grandchildren, my neighbors, our legacy. Many, many good answers, Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much for reading those out, Miriam. We have plenty of motivation to be doing the good hard work that lies ahead. So now I'm going to show you today's agenda. We're going to talk about the ABCs of climate change, what our religious response is, and then give an overview of the 7 steps to success and work on one of those steps in particular, writing a mission statement. So let's talk about what we know about climate change. What is it? What is the main cause? What is the main effect to our climate of these rising global temperatures? How does it impact humans? And how do you feel about it? As a green team, you'll be getting lots of questions, and it's good to have some words that'll roll off your tongue. So, what is climate change? What is happening to our atmosphere? Our atmosphere is represented by this blue sheen around the Earth in this diagram. The sun's energy passes through the atmosphere. A portion of that energy will bounce right back into space, and some of the energy will get trapped by the atmosphere. The problem is that this atmosphere is getting thicker each year with greenhouse gases, causing the Earth to retain more of the sun's energy and get hotter. So why is this happening? Let's use the metaphor of a blanket for the atmosphere. Why is the blanket getting thicker? The burning of fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, causing it to get thicker. What are the main fossil fuels? Coal, petroleum, natural gas, otherwise known as methane. And where do we burn them? Power plants, transportation, agriculture, industry. Let's look at the connection between these emissions and global temps. The temperature and CO2 emissions correlate very precisely. You see the CO2 concentration with the blue line, and the red line is the temps. The more we burn, the hotter we get. We are at approximately 418 parts per million of carbon dioxide emissions today. Now, there's always been a natural variability, but since the Industrial Revolution, when we started burning fossil fuels for energy, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has gone up dramatically. And right now, we're way off the charts. The last 8 years were the hottest global records, dating from the 1880s. That's from the NASA Goddard Institute and NOAA. And how is the climate affected by these rising temperatures? What's the main change to our weather systems? The water cycle has been disrupted. Remember this cycle you learned about in elementary school? The water evaporates from the ocean into the sky and then falls on the land as rain or snow and runs down into the rivers into the ocean where it starts all over again. Well, over 90% of the extra heat from global warming is absorbed by the ocean. With warmer oceans, the rate of evaporation increases. Much more moisture goes from oceans into the sky. And a warmer atmosphere holds a lot more moisture and releases a lot more. Think of a big sponge. So that same extra heat that evaporates water from the oceans also pulls the moisture in the soil out of the land. This causes longer and deeper droughts that damage agriculture and cause wildfires. So the wets get wetter. This is Nebraska. And the dries get drier. So how does this impact humans? Infrastructure damage, spread of disease, harder to grow food, refugees fleeing environmental disasters, wars over scarce resources, and more. Climate injustice means the most vulnerable suffer the most from the effects of our changing climate, and they have done the least to cause it. Climate justice is when we do what we can to prevent the emissions that cause climate change and help our neighbors around the world survive the effects of a changing climate. And those hurt most are usually people of color around the world. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a map, a National Geographic map that's distorted for population. You can see that the US is 4% of the population, the world's population. And this next map is distorted for CO2 emissions, and the US produces 28% of the world's CO2 emissions. These are per capita figures. So I don't know about you, but when I look at these two maps, I certainly feel a little bloated. So the change in our water cycle makes it harder to grow food, yes. And these are the people most affected by climate change. Farmers in China, Mozambique, Pakistan, Syria, Central America, and many, many more countries. Most of the non-industrialized world is fed by small farmers. And the American West is burning more quickly than it has in a decade. About 7.3 million acres of US land burned in 2022. Wildfire seasons have turned into wildfire years, starting earlier in the spring and sometimes lasting well into the following winter. And again, I don't need to tell you all about this. So let's go look at the Biloxi boys. These boys are from the Biloxi tribe that has lived for generations on this island off the coast of Louisiana. The island is now permanently inundated, and the federal government has awarded the tribe $48 million to relocate to the mainland. Already about 15 million American homes are at risk of flooding due to rising sea levels. And the threat is only going to get worse. A report by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, projected that sea level along the US coastline would rise 10 to 12 inches on average in the next 30 years, an uptick that would make damaging flooding occur 10 times more often than it does today. Oopsie. Extreme heat is already the deadliest type of weather disaster in the country, one that hits hardest on low-income and minority communities that are hotter, with more pavement and less greenery, and tend to have buildings with worse ventilation and less access to air conditioning. We're almost done. The number of billion-dollar disaster events has been on the rise in the United States. 2020 set the new annual record of 22 events. There were 18 in 2022, with a total cost of $165 billion. Now, the next slide I'm going to share with you has a whole list. And I have to apologize about that noise. It's annoying. So now that we've looked at some of these costs of carbon, I want to ask you what rises to the top for you. So what concerns you the most about climate change? What's your special concern? You can put in the chat one word or short phrase on the topic of something we've talked about already, something we've not talked about, something on this list, or perhaps not on this list. And then I would like to ask you to put in the chat, how do you feel about this turn of events? Just one feeling word like angry or scared. For example, I'm concerned about drought and wildfires, and I'm scared for my children. So once you've put your words in the chat, I want you to take a minute to jot down your answer on your 7 steps to success handout to add to your story. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute while you do that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Miriam, would you like to read out some of the responses that you're seeing in the chat?
Yes, let me do that. We need to persist and keep a sense of urgency. I feel anxiety. So many concerns, drought and fire. We are all affected by the impact of climate change. I'm concerned about ecosystem loss. And yes, ignoring is frustrating. Famine, folks with the least will suffer the most. Lack of water for joint use, agriculture, and people in the Central Valley of California. Political instability, water shortages, ecosystem loss. Potentially irreversible consequences of doing nothing or not enough. Water scarcity, drought, food shortage, and on and on. Lots of things, yeah.
Thank you for reading those, Miriam. And
Mhm.
I noticed you didn't read very many feeling words. And I know it seems obvious that we all feel pretty bad about it, but being able to articulate your feeling in a way that others can hear you is really important. So even if you don't want to drop me in the chat for now, make sure that you find some words that describe how you feel. Because it's not facts and figures that are going to convince people to join you. It's a heartfelt story. So now we're going to turn to another topic here. We're going to look at the religious response to climate change. So why is it up to us to do something about climate change as people of faith? Why do we care about this in our congregation? Our special task as people of faith is to bring the moral mandate to care for our neighbor and the poor to the conversation about climate change. It is to connect climate change with poverty, with environmental justice and social justice. That is climate justice, and that's our special call as people of faith to make those connections. So how is climate change impacting people in places worldwide, especially the most vulnerable? What is our call, particularly as Episcopalians, to protect the earth, our fragile island home? I want to show you an excellent 4-minute film that features voices from the Episcopal Church presiding bishop's delegation to the United Nations Climate Conference in November of 2021. I'm going to give it a play here.
We're at COP26, and it's being called the most consequential of the Conference of Parties since Paris. A lot is hanging in the balance.
In the 21st century, Perhaps the most pressing and urgent of all, as we have seen, is the climate emergency.
What is at stake for human beings is our very existence and the existence of all life, and also the existence of future generations for which we are responsible.
Already, climate change is hurting people, real people. Loss of lives, homes, farms, jobs, communities, even cultures, many of whom are least responsible for it.
As a young adult, it is sometimes frustrating when all you see are older adults living in the short term, and you have to live with the anxiety knowing that our current trends are threatening a future that you are supposed to look forward to living.
If we care about any social justice issues of our time, if we care about racial justice, the sin of white supremacy, immigration, health, the economy, then we care about climate justice.
When you make a mess, you should probably clean it up. The US is responsible for an overwhelming majority of carbon dioxide in the world. Our carelessness is at the expense of the lives of vulnerable communities, and now we owe a debt.
We are using the voice of the canary in the coal mine, warning all life on Earth that we need to come together in our diverse group of peoples to be able to make a difference to Mother Earth.
In our prayers, we attest that the earth is our fragile island home. The earth is all that we have, and it was created to be all that we need.
Our job is to love our neighbor across the street and around the world. As Presiding Bishop Curry has said repeatedly, God so loved the world means that God loved the whole world, people and everything in it.
We are people of faith, and we are bound to each other and to God by our convictions and our integrity. These values will be imperative for solving climate disaster.
Sharing God's love is not about acquiescing and keeping the peace. It is about speaking up and being a moral voice in a global public square.
It includes a commitment to engaging in and supporting immediate action and urging our leaders to exceed their promises and financial commitments. It is also action that is informed by the wisdom and instincts of indigenous peoples.
From the Amazon rainforest to the Arctic tundra, solutions to our climate crisis must be sought in partnership with indigenous peoples. And our collective commitment as Christians must be a generational commitment.
The good news is we have many solutions that work to address climate change, and our relationship with God gives us freedom, strength, love, and hope to make any changes we need.
Bring your gifts to this work. It takes all of us, and there cannot be enough hands involved.
I have come to realize that this is not the end, but it is a beginning. The Episcopal Church is essential for bringing such hope into the dialogue. It is part of our covenant to do so.
We need to participate in our own redemption as a faith tradition, as people representing Christianity, is to redeem a theology of destruction for one that is life-giving. That is our tradition, and we need to reclaim it.
I hope you heard a lot of really good words in that video that inspire you to answer this question. What does your faith tradition say about climate change? And what is your response? What rose to the top for you when you heard what those Episcopalians were saying about what your faith tradition has to say about climate change? I'd like you to take a minute to jot down your answer on your 7 steps to success, or wherever it is you're taking notes, to add to your story, because this is a question you're going to be answering to complete your story. And then I'd also like you to drop a brief phrase in the chat of your response to what Episcopalians in particular have to say about climate change. What is the faithful response? So I'm going to be quiet now for a minute so you can respond to this question in your notes, and also drop something in the chat. Miriam, would you like to read some comments out from the chat? People are responding to the Episcopal call to care for creation.
Yes, yes, lots of really good responses here. We're called to love one another. Our action or inaction has real impact on our brothers and sisters' lives here and across the globe. Love requires action. We must be fluent on our energy consumption metrics, therms, kilowatts, how to manage them at home and church campus. We are responsible for caring for the resources of the earth and everyone on it. My response has been to work with the State Department. Loving God is loving God's creation, calls us to strive for sustainability. Be good stewards of the gifts we've been given and leave this place better than we found it. Those are just a few, Sarah.
Thank you for reading those out, Miriam. I appreciate that. And I want to point out that you all were emailed a one-pager on the statement from the Episcopal Church on caring for creation, and some small facts on climate, and also the resolution from the 2022 convention. So I encourage you to look at that, and you may decide to choose some words from your denominational body's statement as well. When you go to do this next thing, which is answer this question: what do you believe about caring for the earth? Sometimes your own belief is slightly different than what your denominational body says, but either way, you need to have a belief statement that rolls off your tongue, that is talking about how you feel about things. And so here are some examples that I've gotten from past workshops. God wants us to care for the poor, and the poor are hurt first and worst by climate change. God calls us to be good stewards of his creation. We are obligated to respect the interconnectedness of all beings. We are called to live in right relationship with creation. So you're going to want to take some time to write a statement yourself that starts with the words, I believe. You have space on your 7 steps to success document to do that. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move ahead and urge you to come back to this. Both look at your Episcopal Church handout that you were given, and think about the video you saw, and think about your own beliefs, and write yourself a really short belief statement, because that's part of your story that you're going to want to tell other people to help them decide to join you in your efforts. And so now that you have the basic building blocks for how to talk about why we are doing this work as people of faith, let's talk about how to get organized. The big picture of what we are trying to accomplish is gradually change the culture of our faith communities so that caring for creation becomes a central part of what it means to be a person of faith. To keep the faith, we must keep the earth. Someone said something similar in the chat. So you've already completed the first step, articulate the faith-climate connection, or you will when you're done with this hour. So now let's go to the rest. The green team, or environmental stewardship, is next. Green team, a strong green team is vital to a successful project. Your congregation may already have one, in which case you'll need to bring this idea of carbon reduction to them. If not, you can form your own team. And here's some tips for forming and sustaining an enduring green team for the purposes of reducing the carbon footprint of your congregation. You've already articulated the faith-climate connection. Get approval. Be sure to involve your faith leaders and governing board from the beginning to get their support. You need formal approval from the governing board to let everyone know that caring for creation is the norm for your congregation. You want to write a mission statement. It'll help guide your efforts and build a sense of identity and purpose that outlives the changing parade of faces that naturally cycle through any volunteer committee. And discuss this mission statement with your faith leader and a member of your governing board. And lastly, you're going to determine how your team fits into the organizational structure of your congregation. You're going to want to collaborate with other committees in your church. Some work with the Social Concerns Committee. Others have chosen to make the Green Team a part of their formal stewardship committee, writing Care for Creation into the job description of the stewardship committee. And if it's a standalone committee, make sure you always have a member of the lay governing board on it to help you stay connected. And include the people who are in charge of maintaining your congregational facility, since they are the ones who will be helping to carry out the decisions. And it can be an ad hoc group that disbands after the job is done. So let's look at the next step, communicate. You're going to want to establish good communications with leaders in your congregation. Offer regular updates on your team's activity to your faith leaders, the governing board, and other committees by reporting in person or placing written updates in your congregation's newsletter, bulletins, and website. This is an important step because you want to bring them along with you. And educate is the next step. You know, retrofitting your congregational building to be more energy efficient is an educational activity for the whole congregation. I urge you to offer regular updates on your progress to your congregation, including your faith motivation to take action. You may want to show a film about climate change or caring for creation and host a discussion at your congregation about the connection between your faith and climate change to deepen the understanding for action. People need to know why this is so important and why, as people of faith, they should act on it. And here's a little plug. Interfaith Power and Light has many films available and screening kits with faith-based discussion questions. So you could also ask your faith leader to give a sermon on the importance of caring for creation. You may want to study a book together on faith and climate as well. So the next step is to set goals. Your Diocesan Environmental Commission is standing by to help you reach the goal set by your denomination to reduce the carbon emissions of your congregational facility to zero by 2030. One way to talk about this is to consider it a tithe, like a traditional tithe to the church, only this time a tithe to the earth or creation, our common home. And here's a couple of examples to get you inspired. Loomis Basin United Church of Christ in Placer County, California is an all-electric building using heat pumps to heat and cool the building. They recently installed solar at the cost of $29,000 and are now carbon-free and saving approximately $6,000 a year. So you can see at that rate, payback is under 5 years. And the People's Church of Kalamazoo, Michigan, it's a Unitarian Universalist society. They've set a goal to reach zero emissions by 2030, taking incremental steps. They've already reduced their emissions by 20% after only 3 years of effort using volunteer labor. And the next slide I'm going to show you, I don't expect you to read the details of it. I just want to show you that it's a grid. This is a 10-year plan for People's Church in Kalamazoo to get to net zero. I show it to you like this to demonstrate they have a detailed plan to achieve their goals presented in one simple grid. It keeps them on track and is a clear way to show others their long-term plan. And we're going to look at their plan more closely in the next Zoom workshop on April 29th, because it has good general guidelines that apply to all projects. So make a plan. Making a solid and flexible plan with reasoned timelines requires research into resources and financing for the various activities you are considering. That's a big step, and that's going to be the topic of our meeting on April 29th. And the last step is to celebrate. Celebrate all of the accomplishments along the way to keep your congregation up to date and to offer some good news. Some congregations offer thanks to their facilities managers or volunteers during worship service, and some congregations do a show and tell, offering a tour of the recent updates and explaining why they are important and connected to your faith's calling to care for creation. So now you've had an overview of the process, and next let's get you started on one of the steps, writing a mission statement. It will help guide your efforts as a green team and build a sense of identity and purpose that you can share with your congregation to remind them why you are asking for their support for your project. So, what's your green team's mission statement, and what would you like to see happen at your church? You have some examples on your mission statement handout that you received via email, and the link is also in the chat. A mission statement can refer to the denomination statement on climate change, which you also have, or care of creation, and it can state actions the congregation pledges to take. Here's an example from St. Andrew's Episcopal. This is a church, I think, in Massachusetts. We will promote care for the earth and its resources as God's gifts for sustaining life. We will incorporate care for God's creation throughout the St. Andrew's community, including our worship services, our educational programs, our outreach and service to our community, and our buildings and grounds. And so now I'd like you to take 5 minutes. That's a little longer. Maybe we'll have 3 minutes. Jot down your ideas, just words or phrases that you would like to include in your mission statement on your handout. Perhaps these are words that you heard in that short 4-minute video. Perhaps these are words you saw put in the chat. Perhaps these are words you've seen in this slideshow so far today. And I'd like you to jot down those words or phrases that you think you might like to include in your own mission statement. And once you've done that, I'd like you to share our word or phrase in the chat also. So I'm going to be quiet for a while so you can concentrate on that. And I'm going to leave up this slide with the sample mission statement. And, 3 minutes, that's actually a pretty long time. So just relax into this question. Well, we've come to about the 3-minute mark here. Miriam, would you like to read out some of the comments in the chat that respond to the mission statement task?
Yes, sure. One comment is a quote from scripture, the earth is the Lord's and he made it. And another one, God loves us and creates the earth, land, water, air, and beings. As we love God's creation and our neighbors, we show our love. Another one, we commit to engaging our congregation and learning about the call for caring for the earth and its resources as God's gifts for sustainability. We will plan and act in ways that permeate the culture and operation of our parish. There are many others, but these are some of them.
Great, thank you for reading those. I appreciate that. So you've just started today by taking down a few notes about what you would like to be in the mission statement for your green team. So the next step for your mission statement will be to work with your new green team members that you recruit to draft a short mission statement, and then take it to your faith leader and your governing board for input before completing it. You want everyone to have buy-in on this, but you can speed up the process quite a bit if you have a statement drafted to begin the conversation with. So I urge you to continue working on this and bring it to your first green team meeting so you can begin to come together around a common purpose. And so your homework from our gathering today is to complete steps 1 through 4 on the 7 steps to success handout that was emailed to you, and then to inform your green team and your faith leader and your governing board of the goal of your green team to reach 0 carbon by 2030. And if you don't know who to invite to join your green team, here's one tip. Show a film from your congregation and have a discussion of the film afterwards. Those in attendance may already be interested in caring for creation at your congregation. That's why they came to the film. And before you close your discussion, invite those present to join your green team. And if you need film ideas, you can find them at Interfaith Power and Light. And then I want to remind you to come back on April 29th to take a closer look at how to form a plan for your project. And also, I'll be giving a walkthrough of the calculator or tracking tool that you'll use to track your congregation's carbon emissions, along with other resources that you will find useful in your process. And now I just wanted to open it up for just a few minutes of questions before we have Miriam close. A few minutes of questions, and then we're going to have a group photo, and then Miriam will close. So notice that you have a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. It just says Q&A. So if you could type your questions into that, then Miriam and I can see them so that we can respond to those.
One thing I do want to mention while folks are thinking about their questions is that on April 19th at 6 p.m., the Commission on the Environment and Church of the Incarnation will be co-hosting a viewing of a documentary called The Ants and the Grasshopper. And it is a new documentary that describes the impact of the things we do here in the United States on Africa. It's a very compelling movie, and we'll have a chance for discussion after that. So you'll be seeing some promotion around that movie very soon. So it looks like we have one question here. What carbon tracker do you recommend as in the Episcopal Church sheet?
Oh, I can take that one, Miriam. The carbon tracker that we recommend for your congregational facility is the Cool Congregations carbon calculator, which you can find at coolcongregations.org. And we also have one for households there, but the Episcopal Church has a special one for households. And so I would recommend that you look at that one also. And I'll be sending links to Miriam to include in the follow-up email for both of those. So it would be awesome if you wanted to look at the Cool Congregations Carbon Tracker, or we call it Calculator, before we next meet on April 29th, so that you're familiar with it. You could even go ahead and start an account if you like, but not right away. Mary and I have a little task first to create a landing page just for you all to go to first to get the right message. So wait till Friday. We'll have it up by Friday, right, Miriam?
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions? As we go forward after today, after this moment, if there are things that you're wondering about or questions that you have, please send them to me at edncoe@gmail.com. I've been sending you emails, so I think you have my email address, but Bob, maybe you drop it in the chat. And we want to be responsive to you and the things that might come up in this next month or so until we get back together again. We will also pull together the chat so that there's some really wonderful statements in here that might be helpful to you all as you think about, as you're developing your mission statements. So we'll get that out to you next week also. Here's another nice note about something coming up at Trinity Cathedral. They'll have Earth Day on Sunday, the 30th, from 8:30 till noon. Yeah, we're going to make both webinars available. And so we will be sending those out. So you will have access to that. And any other handouts and things will come to you from me, edncoe@gmail.com. So it'll be coming from me. And Rich, that answers your question. You'll get your packet from me. Any other questions? The video on April 19 will be available. No, Bob says no, it will not be. The ants and the grasshopper will not be. Yes, we will resend all the handouts again. I'm thinking over the next month, Sarah, that there'll be a lot of conversation back at our churches about what we've learned today and how we can use this new knowledge to really get organized at our churches and get the support of our leadership at the churches so we can move forward with next steps after that.
That's awesome.
So I don't see any other questions for now. So Sarah, do you have any other parting words for us?
I just want to thank everybody for joining us here today, because what you're doing is absolutely amazing and important and vital work. And I know you can do it. I've done this workshop, probably 100 times in Iowa. And so many of those churches have gone forth to do wonderful things. And I know that you can too. So bravo and thank you in advance. And I will see you on April 29th.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. And on behalf of the Commission on the Environment, I want to thank everyone who's in this room and others who are members of the Green Team who couldn't be here today for your commitment to move forward on this important journey. And great thanks to Sarah for being our guide today. Again, there will be a recording sent out next week. Hope it's useful for you at your churches. You know about April 29th, 1 p.m. Please mark your calendars for that. We'll be learning a lot more about the ins and outs of actually doing the assessments of our churches. And you will be getting more information from me about that between now and then. So thank you all so very much. I hope you have a good weekend.